honestly, you're tasting snakes. I'm get it, mate. I love you like family, but your tasting snakes is shit.
Hello, I'm Nipper Reed.
And I'm Phil Wolf.
So, settle down, have a nice cup of tea, and enjoy the Venomous Exchange Radio podcast.
Crumpets, Nipper. I want the crumpets.
Well, as you've been such an extraordinarily good boy.
In this episode, we speak with Kyle Ray of East African Venom Supplies in Nairobi, Kenya. Kyle is the curator of East African Venom Supplies, or EAVS. Some of you may know it as Biochem Africa. Mr. Kyle Ray, welcome to the show.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, guys. It's nice to be here.
So, Kyle, why don't you give us a little bit about yourself, and then we can kind of go into the whole Biochem stuff.
Yeah, sure. So I sort of grew up around snakes. My mum and dad had a pet python. So as a youngster, we always used to have a python in the house and feeding it. My godfather, who lived next door, used to do a lot of work with the Kenya Wildlife Service, and he'd go out and catch and relocate snakes amongst other animals we lived next to. I think there was like 4 lion cubs at one stage and a whole bunch of other animals. So I was always brought up around snakes, found them very interesting. And my mum saw it as I grew. She sort of gave me all the books. I read up on them, on all our Kenyan snakes. And then when I was about 12 or 13, we had our work experience at school. And she got in touch with EAVS, it was then Biochem, and spoke to Roy and Taylor, who is the director. He sadly passed away about 3 years ago. And he said, yeah, sure, come down. And they put me to work. I was there cleaning cages, helping feed snakes, and learned a lot from them. And they sort of introduced me into keeping snakes and handling venomous snakes. And I became part of a youth wing which they have, which is to encourage youngsters into herping and looking after snakes. So I was in the senior youth wing, and then after a couple of years, I became a full associate of the snake farm, and I kept a lot of the snakes that didn't do well down here at the coast. So a lot of the little bush vipers, some of the little carpet vipers, and then onto some of the bigger gaboon vipers and things like that later on. So I looked after those for a while, and would go out and do snake awareness talks, catch and relocate any snakes in and around Nairobi that were in people's houses or gardens. Would go further afield into the Mara. I remember one time traveling with my mum 2 hours to an area called Naivasha to catch a python which had been taunting people. And when I sort of asked the guy, have you seen the snake? He says, yeah, we see it all the time. And when we got there, we got into this massive acres. I think it was like a massive farm of 20 or 50 acres. And the guy was like, yeah, so it was seen 2 weeks ago on that hill. And we're like, oh, shucks, that's a lot of area to cover to try and find the snake. So we looked around for a while, and straight away I knew that this is going to be a long shot and we're probably not going to come up with anything. So we searched and searched these massive open fields all around the hill. We ended up not finding anything and heading back. So yeah, we used to do a lot of these trips with my mum, and then when I learned to drive, then I'd be doing them by myself, heading out. And then the whole time I was always coming back to the coast, working at the farm, and helping out where we could. We'd go on snake expeditions, going out catching snakes. Every 2 years we hold an international snake bite seminar, and we're actually meant to be holding one this year. So I used to come and do those. And then I worked my mentor was Roy Taylor, who I worked very closely under. He taught me most of what I know now. And he passed away, sadly, about 3 years ago. And his wife took over it, over the company with his best friend, Anton. And they brought me in, it's coming on to 2 years now, to help with running the farm, looking after snakes. So I'm the curator of East Africa Venom Supplies. And loving being down here, living my dream and working with snakes every day. It's awesome.
That's incredible, man.
Yeah.
Absolutely awesome. And you're Kenyan native, right?
Yeah, I'm 5th generation Kenyan. So yeah, family, some of the first settlers sort of come in.
Awesome, man. It's so cool to see, the progress of you going to, Bioken and volunteering there and then helping them.
Yeah.
And then now you're, running the show.
Exactly. Yeah. Done a whole lot.
Like it. And forgive me for not knowing my snake history, but when did the ashes get involved?
So EAVS is about 42 years old now. So it was started a while ago. James Ash was the curator of Nairobi Snake Park in the museums in Kenya. And he ran that for quite a while. He then moved from there up to the coast and bought this little bit of land where he set up a little snake farm. Some of the old buildings and pits are still there today. And they set that up. He started running it along with Sanda Ash, his wife. And it was mainly just a tourist attraction. He did a little bit of milking on the side for Jonathan Leakey, who did a lot of the milking and exporting venom in those days. And slowly, sort of the local communities came to realize what he was doing. They would come to him if they had any problems with snakes or if someone was bitten by a snake, and they would try to help out as and when they could. They used to give anti-venom for free to people who were bitten. In return, the guys would come with a loaf of bread or some mangoes or fruit or stuff like that. And I think just before James Ash died in 2004, if I'm not wrong, they set up the James Ash Anti-Venom Trust. And the whole purpose of that trust was to be able to give anti-venom to people who couldn't afford it. It's rather expensive here. The anti-venoms we were getting at that time were about anywhere from about $200 up to maybe $300-400. And your average Kenyan, the people who actually get bitten, cannot afford that. They're living off sort of $30 a day if they're lucky. So the trust used to help give anti-venom to people who couldn't afford it. That trust has since taken on by the Taylor Ash Anti-Venom Fund. And the hope is in the future that we'll be able to sort of replenish that project. Once we've got new supplies of anti-venoms and a good source of the anti-venoms and funds, then we'll be able to be giving that anti-venom free of charge to local communities. But yeah, James ran it for a long time. He passed away, and then he passed it on just before he was getting fairly ill. He sort of brought in Royan, who started off as a youngster, the same as I did, sort of going to James Ash when he was at the museums, learning from James, working for him, collecting snakes from all over Kenya and bringing them back to James. And James sort of called him and his wife and said, listen, I'm getting a bit too old to be running this. So if you guys can run it, that would be great. Otherwise, I'm going to have to let it go and stop it. So Roy and his wife, Claire, took it on and they ran it and sort of built it up. And a lot of the things which we're doing now are all things which Roy had been working with. He had been in Geneva at some big conferences with the WHO, working on the roadmap. And so a lot of the stuff which we're doing now is sort of his plans and continuing what he had sort of dreamed and hoped to happen.
Awesome. Absolutely incredible. Names of folks that you've only heard about in either, taxonomy or just old papers, or the
Yeah.
fact that you got to work with these individuals is absolutely breathtaking.
Yeah, no, it was amazing experience.
Yeah.
Very
So
cool.
how much have the practices of keeping an extraction and stuff, how much of that's changed from decades ago to now?
Right, it's changed a hell of a lot. Even sort of when I came in, we sort of tried to revamp how we were milking snakes, and the whole safety aspect to try and make it a lot safer than it actually was. So a lot of the milking used to be just done in a sort of a big pit back in the day, and the snakes were just quickly hooked up, grabbed behind the head with the tongs. Then you'd hold the snake, little glass container, milk it quickly, put the snake back in the cage, and it was a very quick process to try get through as many snakes as they can. Nowadays we have a minimum of 3 people on the snake. We try to tube the snake before we go to pin it. So the snake is put into a tube, gives time for us to get ready to start pinning it, and getting ready to milk it, and also a safer way to sort of restrain the snake. So you're looking at, if we're milking black mambas or cobras, it takes probably about 5 to 6 minutes per snake. If you're moving on to some of the boomslangs or vine snakes, or even some of the little mole vipers, that can go up to about 15 minutes, because we really try to take our time. We don't rush it. We don't want to hurt the snake or get anyone bit. So the process has changed a hell of a lot.
Very cool. Very cool. I've seen, I don't know if you're familiar with Dr. David Williams, who did a bunch of stuff in Papua New Guinea with taipans and brown and black snakes, excuse me. And I saw they use like these vinyl bags, which I thought was very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd met David a few times at some of our workshops, and he had spoken to us about that whole process. And he sort of talks of a taipan like a black mamba on steroids. And it was an amazing process. They've got these massive, I think they're butcher's bags, and they get the snakes into a butcher's bag, and then sort of it gets pulled through like a vice to the snakes at the end, and then you pin it in there. So yeah, just trying to make the procedure as safe as possible. It's a pretty risky procedure anyway, so the safer you can do it, the better.
So how many procedures are you doing a day? Do you do it every day, or have you got set days that you work for extractions?
We milk for the public every weekday. We'll sort of do about three snakes, so it's usually between green and black mambas, and that's mainly just for a display purpose. We'll keep the venom and store it as usual, and then we have a few of our other snakes which we sort of have in a program, which we'll probably milk once a week. There's about 30 snakes being milked, but we're going through a whole process of trying to get the paperwork in order to be able to export and actually sell the venom. So at the moment it all stays in-house in Kenya. Some of it gets used in the universities. We have a place called Kenyatta University for research. But once we get to sell it, then we'll really up our game. We've just finished building our new snake house, as well as our lab, and the snake house will house about 800 venomous snakes. So yeah, it'll be a massive procedure.
That's
so
amazing.
That is amazing. So logistically, if you're looking at housing 800 snakes, what are the logistics of housing 800 snakes in terms of heating and food and lighting, and just changing 800 water bowls is a day's work.
It's crazy. We've got a pretty big team. We've got about 16 handlers at the farm. They're all at the moment trained up as full venomous snake handlers, and each sort of, you got 2 people assigned per room or per cottage, and they go through and they have their whole roster of when there's a cleaning day, our feeding days, and going through like that. Luckily, living at the coast, it's fairly hot so you never have too much of a problem of temperature drops. The thing which we have a problem is keeping snakes we get in Western Kakamega, like the Gabonicas or the Nazicornis, and things which need the temperature to sort of drop. So in some of the rooms we have ACs, air conditionings, to try and bring down the temperature, humidifiers, and only up until recently we're now managing to keep these snakes healthy and in good condition. We're very lucky in that there's a big company here called Kenchik. They supply a lot of chicken all around Kenya, like what we get in our KFC. They supply that, and they give us about 50 day-old chicks every week, free of charge, which we use up fairly quickly. And without that, we would really struggle to keep the amount of snakes that we do keep. We do breed rats and mice as well. We have a guy who also collects frogs and little skinks and lizards as well for some of our other snakes. But the chicks are a big thing. When COVID hit, we had a bit of a worry because we were in complete.
What was trying to
So
think?
it was up to the point where you was talking about COVID and.
Oh yeah, so we lost our chick supply. So we had a big panic on that. If we're gonna, the snakes can go a little while without eating, but if we wait too long, we're gonna have a big problem. So we panicked, bought a massive freezer. And then as soon as the supply kept coming in, we sort of started ordering 1,000, 2,000 chickens every week. And quite quickly we had an overfull freezer and everything went back to normal. So we were quite lucky there.
It's not a bad problem to have.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's interesting. I'm very geeky about diet and things for snakes. So the majority of stuff you're feeding chicks. How often are you feeding? Is it a once a week program, or are you dependent on the snake?
Depending on the snake. Originally, there was a sort of a once a week program, but I've tried to sort of stop that, mix up their diet, sort of skip a couple of weeks, and then every now and then we'll throw in something a little bit different, give them a rat. So to try change up their diet. And also make it not a constant that every week on a Tuesday they're getting fed. So to try and mimic as much as possible how they would be in the wild.
That's grand. And I love the fact that you're catching skinks and frogs locally. I mean, that's fabulous.
Yeah, it's the job we give to a bunch of kids who come in and bring that, and they get a little pocket money.
That's awesome. I presume it's. Do you keep things like rhombic night adders there? And I'm just trying to think what you have that eats frogs.
Yeah, most of the little cobras go crazy for the frogs, as well as the night adders and some of the smaller bush vipers, the Philothamnus, the little green snakes. They go crazy. The night adder population is really not done so well recently. I remember as a youngster where I lived in Nairobi, I used to catch, and you'd go through a period of 2 months and you could easily catch 30 of them just on call outs. I haven't had a call out or seen a rhombic night adder from that area in almost 2 years.
Wow.
Likewise, when we've got here, we've been trying to get the velvety green night adder. You used to be able to find them very easy in the swamps here. But climate, the swamps are drying up, they're getting a little bit more polluted, the frogs are dying out in those areas, and we're seeing sort of a drop in our night adder populations in quite a lot of these areas.
Oh, that's very sad. That's one of my favorite snakes from your area. I'd love to keep some at home. I think they're absolutely stunning.
Incredible snakes. They're beautiful.
That's Rhesus, right?
Causis rhombitus, yeah.
Well, no, I'm saying the velvet green ones.
Resimus.
Resimus, that's it. Excellent.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So,
smart little snake.
Can you give us a bit of a breakdown of the species that's actually held in the collection at present?
Yeah, we got majority of our sort of Kenyan cobras. So your pallida, red spitting cobra, Ashii, of course, the large brown spitting cobra named after James Ash, Nigricolis, your black-necked spitting cobra, Naya Haji, the Egyptian, and then Naya subfluva, forest cobras. We've got a good population of all of those. I think our red spitting cobras, we have probably about 50 or 60 in house at the moment. They were wreaking havoc in sort of northern Kenya and a lot of places. So we really sort of started breeding them and collecting them to properly start looking at the venom and seeing how bad it was and what we could do about it. Again, we have all of your big bitters, Gabonica, Nazicornis, and Arietans. Then all the black mambas, black and green mambas. And then amongst of all the other smaller harmless snakes, your sand snakes, your bush snakes, pythons. So we've got a collection of all sorts. Guests can come and see sort of one of the biggest collections of East African snakes, probably in the world.
Do you guys have Parviocula?
No. Unfortunately not. I would like to get something from outside, but not allowed at the moment. So all that we house is Kenyan snakes. We're looking, another thing is to look into permits to be able to bring in snakes from East Africa, and then further around down into southern and more of Africa, so we can have a better pool of different venoms from different areas.
Just, I could be wrong. I'm normally wrong. Do you have Worthing? Is it Worthing Tony?
Yeah, one of our little dwarf bitters.
Yeah, what a cracking snake.
Yeah, an amazing snake. We've got some of them in our collection. We don't have too many, probably about 10. We're looking at trying to start starting a breeding program, because in a lot of areas where they are found, it's a farming area, and they're just getting slaughtered constantly. And there's a few pockets which are little conservancies and stuff which may be able to house them and look after them. So in the process of trying to figure out how to do that, and looking into all the requirements to sort of do that, to sort of start repopulating areas. Same thing with the Saxes, your Kenya bush viper, another endemic to Kenya, but has been hammered by the pet trade. Again, it's not in any protected areas, so some of the areas you go out, they're being caught and taken out of there non-stop. So it's trying to sort of shed light on illegal animal trade, smuggling, and try and get to the bottom of that as well.
Okay, I mean, they are ferociously expensive in the hobby.
Yeah.
We'll
see why. They're amazing snakes.
Oh, I would love to keep them myself. I keep a number of other theorists, but they're very hard to get hold of.
They're beautiful. We had one which came in, which was gravid. There was a boy who had got his hands on it, and it was amazing seeing the little ones. One morning he called, he's like, "Oh, let's give him birth." Yeah. He ran down and found sort of like 12 of these tiny little things, all in different color variations, and it was amazing.
That's very, very cool.
Yeah,
absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
So you said you have some of the sand snakes as well?
Yeah.
What sort of species
so we got
you
got your hissing sand snake.
Are we talking? Are you talking Samophis?
Yeah, exactly. Samophis, Mozambicus, Orientalis. So we've got majority of them that we can find within here. By I think it's called Belcher, the beautiful sand snake. A very rare little fellow to find. We had our team out on a snake awareness training the other day, and they found one deep in the heart of a national park. So we got another sort of report of a range extension for them. But yeah, an amazing snake to come across.
That's very cool. I've kept some Samophis. They're interesting snakes to keep. They're so alert. They're so quick.
They are so quick. The amount of times we've had them here where you open the cage and it shoots out and you're grabbing it mid-body. It's biting you. And
the feeding response is insane on them. They're fabulous little things.
Yeah, no, they're really cool. Yeah.
And what bush vipers do you have in the collection?
We got Squamager, Hispida, and then Desaxes.
Fantastic. And Hispida has historically always been a really difficult species to keep in captivity. Now, obviously, you're local, you have the local temperatures, and I presume you're feeding frogs to the Hispida. Is that right?
Yeah.
So you have the benefit of feeding the local. You're feeding its actual prey to it.
Yeah. We really struggle. They're very. They feed really like locality dependent. Where you get them, they'll be feeding on different things. So we found others where we've had come in. We think we've got what we need to feed them, and they just do not take to frogs, and they're looking for something else. So we've got one of our other associates, guy called Benjamin Hellestead, who lived in Sweden for a while. He's a Kenyan boy. I grew up together, and he moved in Sweden and did a lot of breeding in Sweden. So he's looking after it at the moment, sort of doing what I used to do as a youngster, and sort of trying to get them to eat, get them into good enough conditions so we can start doing something with them.
Oh, that's interesting. I mean, there is some literature that says they're sort of like slug feeders in some instances, and maybe other invertebrates, not just frogs. And as you say, unless you know the locality and what that particular population was predating on, you're going to struggle in captivity.
Yeah, exactly. But they're amazing things to see them eating. They really hoof down their food. They do not wait for that prey item or something to die. It's gone within no time.
That's cool. And I presume the squams will just eat anything in my experience. They're fabulous feeders. Yeah,
they're even the Hispida, not the Hispida, the Desaxes is similar to that. They eat pretty well, pretty easy. Don't stress them out, and they're good to go.
And how are you keeping them? I presume. Are you keeping those in planted vivs or in rack systems?
Yeah, exactly. They're all in outdoor enclosures where they are at the moment. So they're open to the elements. It's very similar conditions to where they're found. So the temperature drops just fine. And they seem to do really well in that.
That's superb. Splendid.
Yeah.
You had mentioned earlier that you were working with some Ectractaspis. Do you keep any currently?
Yes. We got Phalix and Bibroni. Which we keep both of them and milk both of them on and off from time to time.
Wow.
Which is quite an interesting process.
I was just going to say, how do you milk them? Because I've seen, our friend Nathaniel at M Toxins in the States, he has the bite-proof gloves and then a very, very long cylinder and basically lets the snake thrash and just tap the membrane on the glass.
Yeah, so we have it in a tube. And then I've actually I think there's a video up on our Instagram. And then we hold it gently with a pair of forceps behind the head, and then bring a sort of Petri dish with some parafilm on it, and you sort of poke it on the side, irritate it a bit on the side, and you'll get them to bite that way. And something which we found really interesting with them is you'll get some individuals who will bite majority with their left side or only with their left side, and others which are more sort of right-handed, and others which will use both independently, which is really weird.
That's incredible. That's awesome. And I mean, especially the Bibroni, I'm actually fascinated with the genus currently, and I plan on keeping some in the near future. How do you guys house them for their daily lives?
They're in a pretty boring cage, if not a boring cage, but as visually a snake, you don't really see it all that much. We have logs which they're sort of burrowing in, and in the soil. So hidden under some soil, lots of leaf litter, curled rocks and stuff which they can hide in, as well as hollow logs and things like that.
So you're not necessarily giving them a thick, a large substrate dam for them to burrow into. You're just giving them stuff to hide in.
Exactly, yeah, because we're open to guests to come through. So something which you sort of like pick up a few logs and stuff, and you'll get one or two of them, so a guest can see it visually, and not disturb the snake too much. So a little bit of soil, some leaf litter, and then some rocks and some logs for them to hide under. Seems to work well for us.
Yeah, I imagine if you gave them, 20 or 30 centimeters of soil, you would just never see it.
Yeah, exactly.
Who wants to sift their fingers through the dirt to find it, right?
Yeah, not the best thing to do.
How large are your Bibroni that you have?
They're small guys, probably about 25, maybe 30 centimeters max.
Okay.
And they seem to be our foreman at the farm. He's had a bite from a Phalanx and a Bibroni. Oof. And he reckons the Bibroni is way worse than Phalanx. Not fun. We see a fair few bites from them. If I sort of anywhere from about 6:30 to about now, if I get a call and someone's been bitten by a snake and they sort of say, what snake is it? And straight away they say a black snake, it's nearly 100% one of those two.
Wow. It's the after dinner snake.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Of all the snakes, Phil, all the pretty snakes in the world, and you want to keep the most dull-looking, weird-looking brown bury in the soil snake.
I'm just fascinated with it, man. I love drab colors. I like earth tones, and I like uniqueness.
That's why you keep cobras. They're dull.
Yeah, it's funny if you do a 360-degree spin in my Venomous room. The only thing with color is the Atheris and the Gila monster. Everything else is brown and khaki and beige and.
Whereas mine is
all some Pallida in there.
Yeah, I kept Pallida for a very long time, and there was one day I had about a 7-foot one, maybe 6.5 foot one, and it was at the bottom of. It was actually Kenyan locality, and it was at the bottom of a large Rubbermaid trash can that was on caster wheels. And I had opened the lid wrong, and he looked up at me and spat, and it went 14 feet up on the wall because it's a vaulted ceiling room. And when I saw the wetness on the wall, I said, "You know what? I think I'm done with this species. I think I'm done with them." So, but I have ashes right now, and
nice.
I'm pretty sure it's the last one in the United States. So
and those things are like a tap. When they start spitting, it never ends.
Yeah,
you're completely drenched.
Yeah, he's pretty good on spitting. It's a smaller male. I honestly think he's a runt. He's only about 5 foot, and he's probably about he's probably 14 or 15 years old now. I got him as a neonate, and he just mauls the glass.
Yeah.
So but I'm fascinated with the Bibroni, man. That's probably the species I'm gonna try my hardest to get. Do the ones by you, are they more of a brown, or they have the two-tone, black over cream?
More of a brown and a cream. Yeah.
Excellent. Very cool. And what are you feeding
them? Skinks mainly. When they're really small, on little skinks, and then as they get bigger, then on to pinkies and mice they'll start to take.
Okay. And will they take stuff on the surface, or do you have to put it into the leaf litter, or how's that work?
Originally with ours, sort of letting a skink go down into the leaf litter and them hunting how they'd naturally hunt seems to take, and then slowly you'll get them taking stuff off the tongs and sort of find it.
Excellent. Super fascinating. I love it.
They're a fun little snake.
That's cool. So you mentioned you get a lot of call outs for them. What would you say was the most problematic snake for you in terms of snake bites in your area?
We get a lot of bites from them. You're going to have a lot of pain, bit of swelling, and we don't seem to see too many complications after that. But after that, very closely followed is the puff adder. We get a lot of bites from puff adders, and then probably onto your ashes in our area, and then as you move up, sort of up into Savo, you get the red spitting cobras a lot more.
Okay.
We don't see too many black mamba or green mamba bites here. They do come through, but not too often, luckily.
With the puff adder bites, how is that agriculturally people moving stuff and getting a bite in that way, because they're not sort of coming into houses or anything like that when people are sleeping, are they? Is it more agricultural workers?
Exactly. There's a lot of people clearing land here for farmland. So it's people clearing those land or out herding the sheep, the cattle, or even school kids walking home at night. We had it's maybe just before I got here, I'd come up and we were talking to our guys about wearing safety shoes, and you need to wear safety shoes when you're handling venomous snakes and when you're out on call. And I'd been telling the one guy he needs to get a proper pair of shoes which he can wear. And the next day he came in with his new pair of shoes. He was very happy about it. Did his day's work, cleaned all the cages. We all went home, and I got a call. So-and-so's been bit. And I'm like, oh. And we rush in there, and he had his safety shoes. He then took them off and walked home barefoot, and trod on a little puff adder on his way home. Luckily, we think it was a dry bite. He had no effects and nothing like that. But he quickly learnt his lesson, and now he wears closed shoes the whole time.
That's incredible.
Wow.
And what about the cobras? Are they more residential bites?
A bit more same. You get them coming into the house a little bit more, but not as much. It's probably the same as the puff adders. Guys out in the fields again, tilling the lands, herding the cattle. That's similar sort of stuff to the puff adder.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what is the local people's ethos regarding snake bites? Are they happy to go straight for medical attention, or are they still using folklore remedies?
Yeah, it's mainly more. A lot of them are still going to your traditional healer, your witch doctor, muganga, as we call them here. So that is sort of your first call for majority of them. I think they still say sort of nearly 53% sort of head off straight to the witch doctor. And then you'll get a small population who will go seek the Western medicine. And then another tiny bit who'll go to your witch doctor first, and then after that, then go on to the hospital. So what Roy did for a long time is he actually went around in the coast region talking to all the witch doctors and the mugangas, and sort of trying to talk to them and being like, guys, you know when you get a bad snake bite. And they all sort of agreed, and were like, yeah, we know when we're going to lose that person and when it's a really bad snake. So he was like, well, in that case, if you refer them to us, we'll give you a referral fee, because the guys are just looking to make some money as well. So what we would do is give them a referral fee. They would be able to make some money out of it, and we would be able to bring that guy in and save that life. Then we would say, if it's something harmless, go for it. Ask for a chicken and a goat and carry on that way. So a lot of what we try and do is going into the local community, talking to the witch doctors and mugangas, and trying to sort of explain and change the way they think, to sort of start referring and getting people into hospitals.
And are you seeing many fatalities, or are most of because of the species involved, most of them survivable?
In Kenya, we lose it's an average about 1,000 people a year to snake bite. So it's still a massive problem, and that number sort of places in rural Kenya, up in northern Kenya, Kitui, Samburu, places like that. People get bitten and never actually get to the hospital. So that number could be a lot more than what it actually is. So yeah, we're getting a huge problem with it. And then also the other issue of people scared to use anti-venoms because they've heard that they don't work, or scared by the price tag on it. So then they ended up trying to just go to the witch doctor, or trying to wait it out to see if it won't be a problem. We get quite a few people calling us up seeking advice just after they've been bitten by something. And we're always like, well, okay, send us a photo. And if we receive a photo of a harmless snake, then we just reassure them it's harmless. Sometimes they're like, we don't know we didn't get a photo, we didn't see what it is. It's like, well, then go straight to the doctor, just in case. You don't want to be in the middle of nowhere without antivenom. And surprisingly, you get a few people who decide that they're just going to hold still and see how it goes. And the next day or a week later end up having a much bigger problem on their hands. Yeah.
I'm genuinely sorry, Phil.
No,
I'm genuinely surprised that there is that many fatalities in that area. I thought it will be a lot less than that, given the species that you have. It's not like you've got you don't have Echis or anything like that. So I'm really shocked by that, to be honest.
Yeah, Echis much further up north. A recent study by our wildlife service, they saw that snakebite accounts for about 48% of all human wildlife conflict. So that's way above all your lions, buffalo, all the rest of that sort of stuff. So they have a big problem with that.
I'm absolutely stunned by that. What are the sort of in the area that's populated? What are the sort of population densities of mambas? Then you said you rarely get mamba bites. Is that because they're not encountered, or people are a little bit more wary of areas where they are? Or?
I think it's just the snake itself. They're a lot higher up in the bushes, so they're not on the ground where they'll get trod on. They're much quicker to sort of escape and move away from someone, unlike a cobra or a puff adder, which will actually just stay on the ground or sort of try and fight it out. We find the mambas try to actually get out of the way and move a lot more. So yeah, we don't have a problem with them too much.
Is that the same with the vine snakes as well?
Yeah, but vine snakes, there's a lot of them around, but I find that they rely so much on their camouflage. You can literally go and pick one straight out of the bush with your hands if you wanted to, or the tongs, and it still thinks it's a twig, and it's sat there relying that you still haven't seen it. So we hardly see any bites from vine snakes. Yeah, so we had a bite from boomslang. Unfortunately, the girl, she was disabled, and they had put her out under a tree to play with her siblings, and the snake fell out of a tree, and the siblings ran away, and she was sort of trailing around trying to move, and then getting bit. Luckily, we had some boomslang anti-venom, which she received and recovered just fine.
Wow.
That's grand.
So
When you were speaking about the vine snake, just for our listeners, you're referring to Teletornus, correct?
exactly. So
Okay.
we get with some viruses.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's cool. So if somebody is bitten and you are able to assist and administer antivenom, what sort of costs are we talking?
Well, a vial of antivenom, sort of what we were using was going for about $200 for a vial. And you could need anywhere for a big puff adder or some of the cobra bite. You're looking at maybe up to 7 or 8 vials. We try not to sort of give your recommended dosage if you read on the label, just because we don't have a huge stock of the antivenom. So we sort of give and see how it's going. So we don't use all of our antivenom on one patient. We try to push it to treat other people. So your antivenom alone can be close to sort of $1,000, and then you've got your doctor's fees, bed fees, and everything else like that on top. So yeah, your average Kenyan who's making $20 or $30 really ends up getting stung by that. So the government is working on a lot of different programs, trying to bring in other antivenoms, lower cost antivenoms, and then also trying to subsidize the cost of the antivenoms, so your wananchi or your community here aren't having to pay that full amount. They're either getting it for free or a much more discounted rate. The only problem which we have here is a lot of the antivenoms that are available haven't gone through a proper test to see how effective they are against the venoms of the snakes that we've got in country. Yeah.
Okay, and I know we're kind of always focus on snakes. What about scorpions in Kenya? Is there anything that's particularly harmful there?
Yeah, we've got a scorpion, Parabuthis maximus.
Right.
It's got a pretty awesome name. And when was it? It's probably 10 or so years ago. Before, we used to believe we had no scorpions here of medical value. And there was a guide. He was on safari with his guests in an area of northern Kenya called Meru. And he got stung by this scorpion. And he, again, thought, it's just one of our scorpions. It'll be a bit painful, and that's about it. And he went and lay down. And his son came to check on him a little while later and saw that he wasn't doing so well. And ended up calling Claire and Roy and explained what was happening. And Claire quickly sort of saw these as some pretty serious neurological symptoms and said, you need to get your dad out of there. And very luckily, they carried oxygen on that trip. When he was put on oxygen, he was in a real bad way, but ended up surviving. They brought us the sample of the scorpion. So we looked into it and we figured out that this little Parabuthis maximus, it's got quite an extensive range. And when we've been into the community sort of talking about snake bite, we cover a bit on stings. Even some people in the community sort of said, yeah, before we never used to worry about scorpions, but we've actually started having a lot more problems and actually seeing people dying or being killed by some of these scorpions. And that's mainly from this Parabuthis maximus.
Do you guys get a Parabuthis pallidus as well, or Lysoma as well?
So it used to be Lysoma, and then it split, and the one which we get here is now Maximus and no longer Lysoma.
So it still has the quintessential black telson and the black
exactly.
segment. Excellent.
Yeah, your last sort of two are black.
Yeah, all
it's
black.
It's a brute of a scorpion.
Yeah. Amazing. Have you, excuse me, have you ever witnessed them spray the venom or no?
I haven't witnessed them spray them. I was trying to get one to pose for David Worrell to take photos, and it was the hardest thing I've ever tried to pose. Even a hot Ekis or a black mamba was nothing compared to this little guy.
I can imagine. Yeah, vivacious little critters.
Yeah, really aggressive. Yeah.
So obviously you're super busy at the park and that. Do you get time to go out field herping at all?
I used to a little bit. We try to do a trip sort of every 2 years or so, or every year. With our team, we'll go out in a few different locations. We have a competition to see who can spot the most snakes and everything like that. I have sort of set up and trying to push a few snake safaris or herping safaris. So people from all over the world can come down, book a safari. We can tailor make it to a key species that you want to target. And we go around and do that. So I'm going on one. I was meant to go on one in February, going through Kakamega to targeting all our big bitters and the Theris. But the client who is coming sadly got COVID, so I had to postpone. So that trip's happening in June. But we have a few with all of our other team going out and doing some herping trips. Also photography trips, people who are interested in photography. We had a young gentleman by the name of Tom Williams, who's an English guy, an amazing photographer. And he wanted to look for black mambas. So I was like, right, I know a really good spot. We'll send you on with one of our handlers. And I think within the first 24 hours, he called me and they had caught 8 different snakes and had got his key species, which is a black mamba.
Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah, so we do try and push out quite a few of those.
It's very much an up and coming thing at the moment. I've got a number of friends that I've field herped with for years and years and years who are now taking out organized groups. I think a lot of the birders sort of pushed the way forward with their organized bird trips, and now as field herping becomes a more well-known pastime through Instagram and YouTube,
Exactly.
There's quite a market now for dedicated field herping trips. So it definitely is the way forward.
Yeah. No, we're getting a lot of people interested. Unfortunately in Kenya, it is pretty vast, and getting around takes some time, or you can fly and it doesn't take much time, but it does sort of put up the cost of your trips. You can do it dirt cheap. To try get into some of these areas, you need to stay at specific lodges. You've got conservancy fees, so it does sort of add up a bit compared to sort of going to Madagascar and doing a trip there, or probably even in Southern Africa.
Yeah, there's absolutely no point me trying to do it. We have one species of venomous snake here. That's it.
Yeah.
Wish I could find 5 minutes from my garden. So but there we are. So have you seen Worthing Tony in situ?
I haven't. We've got a few of our handlers. I think there's probably, out of all of us together, we're probably about 20 of us, and I think probably only maybe 6 of us have actually seen it in the field.
Yeah, that's my number one species to see in your location. It's incredible snake. What a species.
We've got some good locations for them, but they're hard to find, and really it's really weather dependent and seasonal when you need to look for them.
So when you are out field herping, or when your team's out field herping, safety protocol wise, and it's just something that we ask everybody that comes on that's out in the field, just to get an idea. It's good to get other ideas. What are you carrying as a first aid kit?
Most of the places we go, we will take anti-venom with us, which will sit in the freezer or at the lodge, wherever we are. We try to talk to the nearest doctor who we know can deal with snake bite, and sort of alert them that we're in your area, we're here for 4 days or whatever, just to make sure they're not away or something like that. And then our pressure bandages, and that's probably all about it that we carry here, along with your normal sort of first aid kit. But yeah, pressure bandages and anti-venom is the main thing which we carry for our snakes.
Ideal.
Yeah.
And any advice to anybody that's coming out to Kenya to field herp, apart from join one of your trips, which is obviously the most efficient way to do it.
It's just do your research. Things like iNaturalist is quite a good one at the moment. You can get a lot of pointers on where stuff are and where to go. Be very respectful of the sort of government policies. All wildlife is owned and protected by the wildlife. So in actual fact, if you do come across a snake and you're trying to manipulate it or dig it out of a hole, you could end up getting in a little bit of trouble for that. So they don't allow anyone sort of touching or moving the snake unless they've got authority to do that, which can make your sort of field herping a little bit harder than usual. But it's all fairly new to Kenya, so these are things that we're trying to work on with the wildlife department to try come up with some better ideas. But yeah, just do your research. We're very happy to give advice. We'd much prefer to sell you a safari. We make a little bit more on top of that, but if you want to do your own thing but want to have one of our handlers accompany you as an extra pair of hands, someone who can help and knows the area, can talk to the locals, that also helps very well. Also just being respectful of the locals in the area. Once they sort of figure out what you're doing, more often than not, they're very happy to have you around. But snakes sort of have a very mysterious look on them, associated with witchcraft. So you can get in a bit of trouble with that. We have been chased out of certain areas because we're dealing with the devil and things like that.
So where can people get hold of you to book one of your tours?
You can go through to our website, which is www.eastafricanreptiles.com. Check us out on Instagram or Facebook, and we can send you info and arrange a safari through that for sure.
That's
awesome.
grand.
Yeah. And a lot of the money which we sort of get in through these safaris and stuff like, we pump a lot of it back into the community with community programs. I'm working on a program to try and sort of educate the kids and get out and talk to them. So we're going into schools where we can talk to them, advise them on snake bite, what to do, how to live around snakes. And then we bring them into the snake farm so they can actually see the snake safely, see what we do, so they can sort of go around and start spreading the word of what we do.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very cool.
Good.
Well, Kyle, thank you so much for coming on, man. We really appreciate it. This is a great show.
Thank you very much, guys. Yeah, please follow our Instagram pages, check on there. We got a new book we're trying to work on, which is a Dangerous Snakes of Kenya book.
Fantastic.
It's a sort of like a little ebook. So our goal is to sort of make it available for our local guides, easy, something to have on a smartphone. I'm working very closely with a friend of mine, a photographer. You actually used the photo in your post of the puff adder.
Oh, nice.
That's one of his photos. So working with him, it's going to be very different to most of our other field books that we get about. So
excellent.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Cool. Thank you so much, guys, for having me.
Thank you. We appreciate it, man.
Absolute pleasure. And I think it's fabulous that you're sat in Kenya and probably quite warm, and I'm sat absolutely freezing cold, and it's dark in England. Yeah.
It's 9 o'clock and I've got a little fan here because it is quite hot.
I've got the central heating and a jumper on, and it's miserable outside.
I'm just still crazy that I'm talking to both of you who are in the future. Like, that's just crazy.
Yeah. I was shocked when you messaged me this morning saying good morning. It took me a while to sort of wrap my head around that. I was like, okay, yeah.
Yeah, I force of habit. My apologies.
Yeah.
No.
No.
But hey, thank
Cool,
you so
guys.
much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very
Cheers.
much, guys. Take care.
As for social media, you can find us at Venom Exchange Radio on Instagram, as well as at Nipper Reed and at knobtails.ig. We can also be found on the Herpetoculture Network and the Morelia Python Radio Network, both on Instagram and your favorite podcast apps. Feel free to hop on YouTube and check out Venomous Etiquette videos, and don't forget to click like and subscribe. Thanks for listening.